The crowd burst into laughter the moment the poorly dressed young man stepped onto the stage. Some pointed at his worn-out shoes. Others mocked his strange accent. A few judges exchanged amused smiles, convinced the performance would be a disaster before it even began. But within minutes, the same people who laughed at him would rise to their feet in complete shock, and history would remember the moment forever. In 1863, during one of the darkest periods in American history, a boy named Thomas Edison lived in a small town in Ohio. Long before he became one of the most famous inventors in the world, Edison was considered strange, difficult, and unintelligent by many people around him. As a child, he struggled badly in school. His teachers reportedly called him slow and confused. He constantly asked unusual questions, became distracted easily, and often ignored traditional classroom rules. At a time when strict discipline defined education, Edison's curiosity looked more like rebellion than intelligence. One day, after only a few months of formal schooling, a teacher became so frustrated with him that he sent a note home to Edison's mother. According to family accounts later shared by Edison himself, the letter claimed the boy was mentally incapable of learning in a normal classroom. For many children in the 1800s, that would have been the end. Education was limited, opportunities were rare, and once society labeled someone a failure, escaping that reputation was almost impossible. But Edison's mother, Nancy Edison, refused to let the world define her son. Instead of humiliating him for his struggles, she removed him from school and began teaching him at home herself. She encouraged his curiosity rather than punishing it. When he asked endless questions, she answered them patiently. When he took apart household objects to understand how they worked, she didn't treat him like a troublemaker. Years later, Edison would say his mother was the reason he became who he was. But outside the home, life was still harsh. As a teenager, Edison worked odd jobs selling newspapers and candy on trains to help support his family. He looked rough, smelled of chemicals from his experiments, and often carried strange mechanical parts in his pockets. Other boys mocked him constantly. Some called him Crazy Tom. At one point, while working on a train, he accidentally caused a small fire during one of his chemistry experiments. Furious railway staff threw him off the train and reportedly struck him hard enough to damage his hearing permanently. The humiliation continued for years. Business owners doubted him, investors rejected him, even experienced scientists dismissed many of his ideas as impossible fantasies. Yet Edison kept experimenting. Night after night, he worked in tiny rented rooms filled with wires, batteries, broken glass, and failed inventions. He slept very little. He ruined countless experiments. Sometimes he spent weeks chasing ideas that led nowhere. People laughed at him because they only saw failure. What they didn't see was what failure was slowly building inside him. By the 1870s, Edison had already created several important inventions related to telegraph systems and communication devices, but many critics still viewed him as more of a tinkerer than a true scientist. Then came the challenge that would define his life. At the time, much of the world still relied on gas lamps and candles for light. They were dangerous, inefficient, and expensive. Many inventors had tried creating a practical electric light bulb, but nearly all had failed. Experts believed the problem was nearly impossible to solve commercially. Edison ignored them. In 1878, he announced publicly that he intended to create a long-lasting electric light bulb that ordinary people could use in their homes. Newspapers mocked the claim. Some scientists openly ridiculed him. One newspaper reportedly joked that Edison should leave serious science to smarter men. Still, he continued. For months, his laboratory tested thousands of different materials, trying to find the perfect filament for the bulb. Cotton, bamboo, paper, linen, wood fibers, almost everything failed. Assistants grew exhausted. Investors grew impatient. Critics became louder. Then one evening, in 1879, after countless failures, Edison's team finally succeeded in creating a bulb that burned for more than 13 continuous hours. It was a breakthrough that changed human history. Soon afterward, improved versions lasted even longer, eventually leading to widespread electric lighting systems across America and the world. The same man people once mocked as strange and unintelligent became one of the greatest inventors in history. By the end of his life, Thomas Edison held over 1,000 patents and helped transform modern civilization through inventions involving sound recording, motion pictures, communication systems, and electricity. But perhaps the most powerful part of his story came years later, after his mother had already died. According to a famous family story, Edison eventually found the old-school letter his teacher had sent decades earlier. As a child, his mother had supposedly read the letter aloud differently to protect him. She told him the school said he was too gifted for ordinary teaching and needed special education at home. But the original letter reportedly said something far crueler, that he was difficult, incapable, and unfit for school. Edison reportedly sat in silence for hours after reading it. The world that once mocked him had nearly convinced him he was worthless before his life had even begun. And that is the danger of judging someone by their past.
The struggling child in the classroom may become the person who changes history. The awkward teenager people laugh at may one day inspire millions. The person society dismisses today may become the one everyone admires tomorrow. Human beings see moments. Time sees potential. That is why mocking someone's past is so dangerous, because no one truly knows what another person is becoming. The crowd that laughs today may someday stand in awe of the very person they once underestimated.